The scorching summer sun beat down on San Bernardino, California like God's own furnace as Bethany Turner wiped sweat from her brow and squinted at the horizon, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake coming west. The year was 1878, and the promise of a new life had brought her thousands of miles from her home in Boston to this dusty, unforgiving landscape that seemed determined to test her resolve at every turn. Miss Turner. "The stagecoach leaves in 30 minutes, called the clerk from the general store where she had purchased her final supplies. "You'd best hurry if you want to make it to your uncle's ranch before nightfall." Bethany nodded her thanks, gathering her skirts as she navigated the rough-hewn boardwalk of the frontier town. At 23, she had left behind everything familiar after her parents' passing, armed only with her teaching credentials and the promise of a place to stay with her uncle who had settled in the area years before. Her heart ached with the grief of loss, but Bethany wasn't one to wallow. Life moved forward, and so would she. As she approached the stagecoach, a commotion near the livery stable caught her attention. A tall man with broad shoulders was calming a spirited Palomino horse, his voice a gentle rumble that somehow carried across the busy street. When he turned, Bethany caught sight of his profile's strong jawline covered in stubble, a straight nose, and eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore the practical garb of a working cowboy, worn leather chaps over denim trousers, a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal sun-bronzed forearms, and a dust-covered hat pulled low. The stagecoach driver hollered, breaking her trance. "Last call for the San Bernardino outbound." "All aboard who's coming aboard." Bethany hurried to climb into the coach, settling her modest traveling case and satchel beside her on the wooden bench. To her surprise, the cowboy she'd been observing swung himself up into the coach moments later, tipping his hat to her with a polite nod. "Madam," he said, his voice as rough as the terrain, "Isaac Xavier, hope you don't mind the company." "Not at all, Mr. Xavier," she replied, extending her gloved hand. "Bethany Turner." His calloused hand engulfed hers briefly before he released it and settled back against the leather seat. Two other passengers, an elderly couple heading to visit their daughter, completed their traveling party as the coach lurched forward, beginning its journey toward the outskirts of town. The conversation flowed intermittently during the first hour of travel pleasantries about the weather, careful inquiries about destinations. Bethany learned that Isaac was returning to his small ranch after delivering horses to the cavalry fort. The elderly couple, the Johnsons, shared stories of their daughter's new life as a rancher's wife. "And what brings you to these parts, Miss Turner?" Mr. Johnson asked kindly. "I'm to live with my uncle, James Turner. He has a ranch about 20 miles outside town," Bethany explained. "I'm a teacher by profession, though I'm not sure there's much call for education in these parts." "More than you might think," Isaac commented, surprising her with his interest. "Families are settling, building communities. Children need learning, same as anywhere." His observation warmed something in Bethany, the first genuine connection she'd felt since arriving in California. The stagecoach rumbled over increasingly rough terrain as they left the main road, heading into the foothills that surrounded the valley. The heat intensified, and Bethany found herself frequently patting her face with her handkerchief, careful not to disturb the simple updo she'd managed that morning. "We'll stop at Cottonwood Creek to water the horses," the driver called down through the open hatch. 10 minutes to stretch your legs." When the coach rolled to a stop beside a small, tree-lined creek, Bethany was grateful for the opportunity to escape the stifling interior. The Johnsons remained seated, but Isaac jumped down first, then surprised her by offering his hand to help her descend. "Thank you, Mr. Xavier," she said, accepting his assistance. His hand was warm and strong around hers, and she couldn't help but notice the way his eyes, a striking shade of green, assessed her with quiet interest. "Just Isaac, if you don't mind," he replied, releasing her hand once her feet touched solid ground. "Mr. Xavier was my father, and hearing it makes me look over my shoulder for him." Bethany smiled, charmed despite herself. Then you must call me Bethany. While the driver tended to the horses, Bethany walked toward the creek, eager to splash some cool water on her face. The trees provided welcome shade, and she savored the respite from the relentless sun. Isaac stayed near the coach, scanning the surrounding landscape with the vigilance of someone accustomed to anticipating danger. Bethany knelt by the water's edge, setting her hat beside her and removing her gloves. The creek bubbled merrily over smooth stones, a serene contrast to the harsh terrain that surrounded it. She cupped her hands to collect water, sighing with relief as the coolness touched her heated skin. It happened so quickly she barely had time to react. A subtle movement among the rocks, a dry, rattling sound that sent primal fear shooting up her spine. Before she could scramble away, pain seared through her ankle sharp and burning like she'd been struck with a hot poker. Her scream pierced the quiet afternoon as she fell backward, catching a glimpse of the diamond-patterned body of a rattlesnake slithering back among the rocks. "Bethany!" Isaac's voice boomed across the distance as he sprinted toward her. "Don't move." She couldn't have moved if she'd wanted to, frozen by shock and pain as her ankle began to throb and swell almost immediately. Isaac dropped to his knees beside her, his face grim as he assessed the 2 puncture wounds already seeping blood. "Rattlesnake," he said, his voice steady though his eyes betrayed his concern. "We need to act fast." Without hesitation, he reached for his hunting knife, slicing through the fabric of her stocking to expose the wound. "This will hurt," he warned, making a quick, shallow X cut over the bite. Blood welled immediately and Bethany bit back another scream, tears streaming down her face. "What's happened?" the driver called, rushing toward them with the Johnsons peering anxiously from the coach. "Rattlesnake bite," Isaac replied tersely. "Get me my saddlebag from the coach." "There's whiskey in there." As the driver hurried to obey, Isaac looked directly into Bethany's eyes. "I need to suck out the poison. It's the only way to give you a fighting chance. Do you understand?" Terror clawed at her throat, but she managed to nod. The stories of rattlesnake bites ending in death or amputation flashed through her mind. "Please," she whispered. "Help me." Without further discussion, Isaac bent and placed his mouth over the wound, sucking hard and then turning to spit the venom-tainted blood onto the ground. He repeated the process multiple times, his face set with determination. The driver returned with the whiskey, which Isaac used to rinse his mouth between attempts before pouring some directly onto the wound, causing Bethany to cry out again. "You're doing well," he told her, his voice gentle despite the urgency of his actions. "Stay with me, Bethany." "Is she going to die?" Mrs. Johnson asked tearfully from where she now stood a few paces away. Isaac tied a strip of cloth just above the bite, tight enough to slow the spread of venom but loose enough to allow some blood flow. "Not if I have anything to say about it," he answered grimly. "But we need to get her to a doctor. How far to the Turner ranch?" "About 5 miles, the driver replied, "but Doc Simmons lives just 2 miles past the creek bend." "Then that's where we're going," Isaac decided. He gathered Bethany into his arms, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. "Hold on," he murmured to her as she clung to his neck, the world beginning to spin around her. The last thing Bethany remembered before darkness claimed her was Isaac's steady heartbeat against her cheek and the desperate prayer that whispered through her mind. "Please don't let me die before I've had a chance to live." When Bethany regained consciousness, she was lying on an unfamiliar bed in a small, tidy room. Sunlight filtered through cotton curtains, casting dappled patterns across a braided rug. The throbbing in her ankle reminded her immediately of what had happened, and panic fluttered in her chest until a soothing voice broke through her fear. "You're awake." "Good." Isaac appeared at her bedside, his expression a mix of relief and lingering concern. "You've been out for nearly a day." Bethany tried to sit up, but dizziness forced her back against the pillows. "Where am I?" "Doc Simmons' place. You're lucky he was home." Isaac pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, his large frame seeming incongruous in the modest surroundings. He says you'll recover, but it'll take time. The venom wasn't as potent as it could have been, probably a young snake. She closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed by gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. You saved my life. Isaac shook his head. Anyone would have done the same, but it wasn't anyone, it was you. Bethany reached out impulsively, touching his hand where it rested on the edge of the bed. I don't know how to repay such a debt. A flush crept up his neck, visible above his collar. There's no debt, Bethany, I'm just glad I was there. A knock at the door interrupted them as an older man with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes entered carrying a tray with a steaming cup. Ah, Miss Turner, you're awake. Excellent, I'm Dr. Simmons. How are you feeling? Weak, she admitted, and my ankle burned something fierce. To be expected, the doctor replied, setting the tray on the bedside table. Drink this willow bark tea, it will help with the pain and inflammation. I've sent word to your uncle about what happened. He should be here by nightfall. Bethany accepted the cup with trembling hands. Thank you, doctor. Your young man hasn't left your side since bringing you in, Dr. Simmons added with an approving nod toward Isaac. Refused to even take a proper rest. That's dedication, if you ask me. He's not Bethany began, but Isaac interrupted smoothly. Just doing what needed doing, Doc. He stood, stretching his tall frame. I'll step outside while you check on your patient. Once the door closed behind him, the doctor set about examining Bethany's ankle, which had swollen to nearly twice its normal size and bore an angry red wound surrounded by mottled purple bruising. Mr. Xavier did everything right, doctor. Simmons commented as he applied a poultice of herbs to the bite. Getting the venom out quickly, keeping you calm, bringing you here without delay. He's a good man to have around in a crisis. I barely know him, Bethany confessed. We only met on the stagecoach yesterday. The doctor's eyebrows rose. Is that so? Well, fate has curious ways of bringing people together. He wrapped her ankle in clean bandages. You'll need to stay off this foot for at least a week. No strenuous activity for a fortnight after that. The venom can have lingering effects, weakness, aches, fever. Don't push yourself. After the doctor left, Isaac returned, carrying a bowl of stew. Doc says you need to eat to keep up your strength, he explained, setting it beside her. You don't have to stay, Bethany said, though the thought of him leaving caused an unexpected pang. Surely you have your own responsibilities to attend to. Isaac settled back into the chair. My neighbor's looking after my place. I'd like to make sure you're squared away with your uncle before I head back. His expression softened. Besides, I feel responsible for you now. Because you saved my life. Because I'd like to think if my sister were alone in a strange place and got hurt, someone would look out for her. He paused, then added more quietly, and because I can't quite bring myself to leave yet. Something warm unfurled in Bethany's chest at his words, something that had nothing to do with snake venom and everything to do with the gentle strength of the man before her. Uncle James arrived as evening shadows lengthened, bursting into the room with the energy of a much younger man despite his 60 years. His weather-beaten face creased with worry as he took in his niece's condition. Bethany, my girl, when I got word, I feared the worst. He clasped her hand between both of his. Your aunt is beside herself. We were expecting you yesterday. I'm sorry to have caused such worry, Bethany replied, touched by his evident concern. James Turner turned to Isaac, extending his hand. And you must be the cowboy who saved my niece. Doc Simmons told me what you did. The Turner family owes you a debt, son. Isaac shook his hand firmly. No debt, sir, just glad I could help. Nonsense, James declared. You'll come stay at the ranch while Bethany recovers, I insist, it's the least we can do. Isaac hesitated, glancing at Bethany. That's generous, Mr. Turner, but I wouldn't want to impose. It's settled, James said with the authority of a man accustomed to having his way. Doc says Bethany can be moved tomorrow if she's stable. You'll help me get her home, then stay as our guest for as long as you like. And so it was decided, with little input from either Bethany or Isaac. The next day, carefully bundled in blankets and transported in James's wagon with a makeshift bed of straw and quilts, Bethany made the journey to the Turner ranch. Isaac rode alongside on his palomino, keeping a watchful eye on her throughout the journey. The Turner ranch was modest by California standards but well-maintained, with a sturdy main house, several outbuildings, and a bunkhouse for the handful of ranch hands employed by her uncle. Aunt Martha, a plump woman with graying blonde hair and a perpetual smile, fussed over Bethany from the moment they arrived, installing her in a sunny bedroom with a view of the foothills. "You poor dear," Martha clucked, plumping pillows and adjusting blankets. "To think you might have died before even reaching us. Thank the Lord for that young man." "Isaac," Bethany supplied, unable to keep a certain warmth from her voice. "His name is Isaac Xavier." Martha's eyes twinkled knowingly. "Handsome fellow, isn't he, and those eyes green as spring grass." "Aunt Martha," Bethany protested, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "He simply did what any decent person would do." Was all her aunt said, but her smile spoke volumes. Over the next several days, as Bethany gradually regained her strength, Isaac became a fixture at the Turner ranch. Though offered a room in the main house, he chose to stay in the bunkhouse with the other hands, rising early to help with chores and quickly earning the respect of James Turner with his knowledge of horses and cattle. Each afternoon, however, belonged to Bethany. Isaac would appear on the porch where she rested in a rocking chair, sometimes bringing wildflowers he'd gathered during morning rides, other times arriving with a book borrowed from James's modest library. He read to her when her eyes tired, his deep voice giving life to the adventures of characters far removed from their own reality. "You read beautifully," Bethany remarked one evening as the sun dipped behind the mountains. "Where did you learn?" Isaac set the book aside, his expression growing distant. "My mother was determined her children would be educated. She was a schoolteacher before she married my father. Taught all 5 of us to read and write and cipher before any of us ever saw the inside of a schoolhouse." "And where is she now?" Bethany asked softly, sensing the story held sadness. "Gone. 8 years now. Influenza took both my parents within a week of each other." His jaw tightened briefly. "My older brothers took over the family ranch in Colorado. My sister married a storekeeper in Denver. I needed my own path." "So you came to California?" He nodded. "Worked cattle drives, broke horses, saved every penny until I could buy my own place 2 years ago. It's small, but it's mine." Bethany studied his profile in the fading light, seeing beyond the rugged exterior to the depth beneath. "What do you want, Isaac? From your life, I mean." The question seemed to surprise him, and he considered it carefully before answering. "Land that produces, animals that thrive, eventually a family to share it with." He turned to look directly at her. "What about you, Bethany Turner?" "What do you want from life?" "I thought I knew," she answered honestly. "To teach, to make a difference in children's lives. But now—" She trailed off, uncertain how to articulate the shift in her perspective since the snake bite since meeting him. "Near death has a way of rearranging priorities," Isaac observed quietly. "Yes," she agreed, holding his gaze. "It certainly does." As the days passed, Bethany's ankle healed steadily. The bruising faded from angry purple to yellowish green, and she graduated from complete bed rest to short walks supported by Isaac's strong arm. They developed a routine of morning strolls around the garden, their conversations flowing more freely with each passing day. During one such walk, 2 weeks after the snake bite, Bethany stumbled slightly, and Isaac's arm tightened around her waist to steady her. The contact, more intimate than their usual linked arms, sent a jolt of awareness through her body. When she looked up to thank him, his face was inches from hers. His green eyes darkened with an emotion that made her breath catch. For one suspended moment, Bethany thought he might kiss her. Instead, he carefully set her back on her feet, his hand lingering at her waist a heartbeat longer than necessary. "Careful," he murmured. Don't want to undo all the healing you've done. The tension between them grew in the days that followed, unspoken but undeniable. Bethany found herself watching for Isaac throughout the day, her heart quickening when he appeared. She noticed the way his gaze followed her movements, the gentleness with which he helped her navigate the ranch's uneven ground, the smile that seemed reserved solely for her. Aunt Martha observed their growing attachment with thinly veiled approval, while Uncle James found increasingly transparent reasons to send them on errands together, checking fence lines within easy riding distance, or delivering baked goods to neighboring ranches. 3 weeks after the snake bite, Dr. Simmons visited to check on Bethany's progress. "Remarkable recovery," he pronounced, examining her ankle with professional detachment. "You're young and strong, and it seems the venom wasn't as potent as it might have been. Still, I recommend caution for another week or two." That evening, Isaac found Bethany sitting alone on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. He hesitated at the bottom of the steps, hat in hand. "May I join you?" he asked, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty that was new. Bethany patted the space beside her. "Please." He settled next to her, the swing creaking slightly under his weight. For several minutes they sat in comfortable silence, watching as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "Doc says I'm nearly healed," Bethany finally said. Isaac nodded. "I heard. I suppose you'll be heading back to your ranch soon." His hands tightened on his hat. "I suppose I should." Another silence stretched between them, this one laden with unspoken words. "I've been thinking," Isaac began, just as Bethany said. "I don't want." They both stopped, and a smile tugged at Isaac's lips. "Ladies first." Bethany gathered her courage. "I don't want you to go," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is that foolish of me? We've known each other such a short time." Isaac turned toward her, his expression serious. "Time isn't always the best measure of things, Bethany. Some people know each other for years and remain strangers. Others." He reached for her hand, engulfing it in his larger one. "Others know in weeks what others don't discover in lifetimes." Hope blossomed in her chest. "And what is it you know, Isaac Xavier?" His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending tingles up her arm. "I know that the thought of riding away from this ranch from you feels like leaving a piece of myself behind." He paused, searching her face. "I know that in 3 weeks of knowing you, you've become more important to me than people I've known my whole life." Tears pricked at Bethany's eyes. "I feel the same way," she confessed. "When I think about you leaving, it's like facing another snake, terrifying and painful." A choked laugh escaped him. "That's quite a comparison." "But true," she insisted. "I came west looking for a new beginning after losing my parents. I never expected to find." She hesitated, suddenly shy. "To find what?" he prompted gently. "You," she finished simply. "To find you." Isaac's free hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch reverent. "Bethany Turner, I had no intention of falling in love when I boarded that stagecoach. Yet here I am, completely and utterly in love with the bravest, most beautiful woman I've ever known." Joy surged through her at his words. "And I love you, Isaac. Perhaps it's madness to feel so strongly so quickly, but I cannot deny what my heart knows to be true." This time, there was no hesitation. Isaac leaned forward, closing the distance between them as his lips found hers in a kiss that was both gentle and fiercely possessive. Bethany's arms wound around his neck as she returned the kiss with all the emotion that had been building since that fateful day by the creek. When they finally parted, both breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I don't have much to offer yet. My ranch is small, the house needs work." Bethany pressed her fingers to his lips. "I don't need much, just you." "Your uncle might have something to say about this," Isaac pointed out, though his smile belied any real concern. As if on cue, a throat cleared behind them. They turned to find James and Martha Turner standing in the doorway, their expressions a mixture of amusement and affection. "About time," James declared gruffly. "Been watching you two dance around each other for weeks." Martha swatted her husband's arm. "James, don't embarrass them." She beamed at the couple. Though I must say we had begun to wonder if you'd ever get around to declaring yourselves. Bethany blushed deeply. Uncle James, Aunt Martha, no need to explain, my dear, Martha interrupted kindly. Love has its own timeline. Isaac stood, still holding Bethany's hand. Mr. Turner, I'd like to ask for your blessing to court your niece properly. James assessed the young cowboy with shrewd eyes. You saved her life. You've proven your character by how you've stayed by her side. I'd say courting is a bit behind where you two actually are. He chuckled at their matching blushes. But yes, you have my blessing for courting and whatever comes after when you're both ready. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Bethany's life. As her strength fully returned, Isaac taught her to ride properly, his hands steady and sure as he helped her mount and dismount. They explored the ranch together, picnicking by a small lake on the property and talking for hours about their hopes and dreams. Isaac rode to his own ranch regularly to check on things but always returned to the Turners by nightfall. On one such return, he brought Bethany a small carved wooden box. "What's this?" she asked, turning the intricate piece in her hands. "Open it," he urged, an unusual nervousness tightening his features. Inside, nestled on a scrap of velvet, lay a simple gold band with a small pearl set in its center. Bethany's breath caught as she looked up at Isaac, who had dropped to one knee before her. "Bethany Turner, I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I want to build a life with you, raise horses, cattle, maybe children someday. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as joy overwhelmed her. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Isaac Xavier, I will marry you." They were married 2 months later in the small church in San Bernardino with the Turners, the Johnsons from the stagecoach, Dr. Simmons, and a handful of friends and neighbors in attendance. Bethany wore a cream-colored dress that Martha had helped her sew, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil. Isaac stood tall and proud in a new black suit, his usual cowboy hat replaced with carefully combed hair for the occasion. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, spoken with the conviction of two people who had found in each other something rare and precious. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac's kiss held a promise of all the years to come. The couple made their home at Isaac's ranch, which flourished under their combined care and determination. Bethany opened a small school for the children of neighboring ranchers, fulfilling her desire to teach while building roots in their community. Isaac's horse breeding business grew steadily, his eye for quality stock earning him a reputation throughout the territory. 2 years after their wedding, Bethany gave birth to their first child, a son they named James, after her uncle who had been so instrumental in their coming together. As she watched Isaac cradle their newborn with hands that could break a wild horse yet handled their child with infinite tenderness, Bethany reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Xavier?" Isaac asked, noticing her contemplative expression as he sat beside her on their bed. "Just that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the greatest blessings," she replied, reaching out to stroke their son's downy head. "If not for that rattlesnake." Isaac smiled, the same smile that still made her heart skip a beat. "I've thought about that. I might never have spoken to you beyond polite conversation on that stagecoach. We might have gone our separate ways at your uncle's ranch. Instead, you saved my life. And you saved mine, though you didn't know it." At her questioning look, he explained, "I was lonely, Bethany. Building my ranch, working from dawn to dusk, it all felt empty somehow. Then there you were, turning a tragedy into the greatest gift I've ever received." Bethany leaned forward to kiss him gently. "I love you, Isaac Xavier. And I love you, Bethany Xavier, forever and always." As their son slept peacefully between them and the California sunset painted their bedroom in golden light, Bethany knew with absolute certainty that sometimes love arrives in the most unexpected ways, even through the bite of a rattlesnake, and the courage of a cowboy who stayed by her side.